Welcome back. Both sides rest in a case of Florida versus Danielle Redlick, the woman accused of murdering her stepdad turned husband. Redlick is charged with second-degree murder and evidence tampering for the murder of her husband, Michael Redlick. Redlick claims she killed him in self-defense when she stabbed him in 2019. The two had been married for nearly 20 years and had 2 children together. Defense attorneys say the couple's relationship had a history of abuse and cheating. The couple had also reportedly filed for divorce by the time of Michael's death. 911 calls reveal Redlick initially told dispatchers that Michael stabbed himself and had a heart attack. Investigators say she waited several hours before calling for help the night of his death. As part of its rebuttal, the state called the case's lead detective, whose testimony differed from the medical examiner's.
You attended the autopsy of Michael Redlick in this case, is that right?
That's correct.
And you spoke with Dr. Zadovich.
That's correct.
And she was the medical examiner who conducted the autopsy of Michael Redlick.
Yes, that's correct.
And you had a conversation with Dr. Zadovich, didn't you?
Yes.
And she told you that Michael Redlick bled out within 5 to 6 minutes, is that correct?
That's what I understood.
That he died within 5 to 6 minutes of the stab wound, is that correct?
That's what I understood.
On the next episode of Law and Crime Daily, we'll break down closing arguments from both sides. Terry, why is it so important that the lead detective testify saying Michael Redlick died within 6 minutes, especially when it didn't seem to match up with the medical examiner's testimony?
Credibility is everything in any trial, and here the jury instructions actually said if there's a prior inconsistent statement, then the jury can consider that. And it was really important that lead detective talk about the fact that the medical examiner first told her that, in fact, he bled out in 5 to 6 minutes. That's critical, because that means that we know that the defendant didn't just wait around until he passed, that it was 5 or 6 minutes. And then when the medical examiner got on the stand, she really tried to backtrack, and she said, well, you have to observe. So it was critical that that information got in, and kudos to the defense for getting that in there, for having that detective admit that.
Yeah, it's going to cause a little confusion for the jury there and maybe a little reasonable doubt. Katherine, what did the lead detective give the prosecution and defense to argue in their summation, and who had more to use based on this testimony?
The defense definitely has more to use in this testimony, because then they can question, as Terry mentioned, the credibility of the witnesses that the state put on. What's interesting too in here is when we were seeing how the prosecution was questioning Danielle Redlick, he was very intimidating and almost over the top in terms of using the juror in Amber Heard's case. When the juror mentioned that Amber Heard's legal team was sharp on the elbow, here the prosecutor, when he was questioning Danielle Redlick, he even had his arm on his side and towering over her, seems like it, and did not look appropriate in terms of being too condescending. So I think the defense will definitely use that a lot as well, in addition to the lead detective.
Absolutely. There's a reason why a lot of people say Camille Vasquez cross-examining Amber Heard made a lot more sense than Ben Chu, and that's, I think, the point that you're making. And in Jacksonville, Florida, defendant Alan Wade offers an emotional apology at his resentencing trial for his involvement in the murder, which happened more than a decade ago. Wade, along with 3 others, Michael James Jackson, Tiffany Cole, and Bruce Nixon, were convicted in 2008 for their involvement in the 2005 murder of Reggie and Carol Sumner, a couple who were buried alive after being robbed. A jury found the 4 guilty of digging a hole in a remote wooded area in Georgia before kidnapping the Sumners, stealing from the couple's home, then forcing them into the trunk of their own car. They forced the Sumners to share bank account information before burying them alive. 3 of the 4 were given the death penalty. Wade and Jackson are being resentenced separately after a change in Florida law which requires a unanimous jury decision for the death penalty. Wade took the stand on Wednesday, not for questioning by attorneys, but to give an apology to the family of the victims and his own.
Nothing I say here today is meant to justify, excuse, or defend my cowardly crime. Reggie and Carol, if there's a window or a connection to the afterlife or some sort of cosmic consciousness, and I know you can see tremendous regret and shame in my heart.
Coming up on Law and Crime Daily, opening statements are presented as Nipsey Hussle's accused murder stands trial. Plus, Candy the dog's owner takes the stand to describe the emotional moment when his dog was shot and killed.